Read the passage Bessie Colanlan Aviator and remember Bessie. As you read, stop and answer each question. Use the text evidence. Bessie Colanlan Aviator. Bessie Colanlan was a daring and determined young woman, born to a poor family in Texas on January 26, 1892. She grew up at a time when few opportunities were open to African Americans or to women. Bessie was not quite 12 years old in December of 1903 when Wilbur and Orville Wright made the first airplane flight. After that historic event, many people became enchanted with the idea of flying. In the early years of aviation, however, only white men and a very few white women became licensed pilots. As a young girl, Bessie worked alongside her mother, picking cotton and doing people's laundry to help support the family. She attended a one-room schoolhouse from first grade through eighth grade and would read aloud to her family in the evenings. It is reported that she often vowed to her mother that she intended to amount to something. What does the phrase amount to something mean? After she finished school, Bessie worked and saved her money until she had enough to continue her education. At the age of 18, she left home to attend college in Oklahoma. After 1 year there, however, her money ran out and she returned home. She worked for several years doing laundry and then moved to Chicago, Illinois in 1915. In Chicago, Bessie lived for a time with her older brothers, who had served in France during World War I. Her brother John often teased her by telling her that French women had careers and could even fly in airplanes. Bessie had read about aviation and watched short films about it. Now she set an ambitious goal for herself. She was determined to become a pilot. Bessie applied to flight school all over the United States, but none would accept her. The publisher of an important African American newspaper in Chicago was a friend of Bessie's. He suggested that she go to flight school in France. Bessie kept working and saving her money, and she also went to night school to learn to speak French. In November 1920, Bessie traveled to France to attend a famous flight school, the Colanlan Brothers School of Aviation. The course usually required 10 months to complete, but it took Bessie only 7 months. On June 15, 1920, Bessie Coleman received her international pilot's license from the Fédération Aéronautique Internationale. The International Federation had been founded in 1905 to advance the science and sport of flying. On that day, in 1921, Bessie Coleman became the first African American woman in the world to be licensed as a pilot. She also became the first licensed African American pilot in the United States, male or female. Bessie's dream was to return to the United States and earn enough as a pilot to establish her own flight school. In 1922, she told news reports in New York that she hoped to become a leader in introducing African Americans to the new technology of flight. Because she was both African American and a woman, however, her opportunities were limited. She would once again have to work hard to achieve her goal. To earn money, Bessie became a barnstormer. Barnstormers were pilots who traveled around the country putting on air shows. Bessie had learned to perform daring stunts, such as tail spins, barrel rolls, and loop-to-loops. In a tailspin, the plane spiraled rapidly toward the ground. In a barrel roll, the plane spins around in the air, turning upside down and right side up again. To do a loop-the-loop, the plane flies straight up, turns over, and zooms down. Then it turns straight up again, completing a loop in the sky. Bessie's first air show was held in New York on September 3, 1922. It was reported that approximately 3,000 people came to see her thrilling performance. After that, Bessie traveled around the country performing in air shows, making speeches, and teaching people to fly. Bessie Coleman did not live to fulfill her dream on founding a flight school. On April 3, 1926, she was riding in the passenger seat of her plane with her mechanic at the controls. Bessie planned to parachute out of the plane as part of her air show the next day. She was learning out of the cockpit to look for good landing spots and not wearing a seat belt. The plane suddenly went into a dive and turned over, throwing Bessie out of the plane. It was a sad and suddenly end to a life of courage and determination. What is the central idea of this passage? Summarize the passage briefly, without including personal opinions or judgments. Remembering Bessie. It was on June 19, 1925, when Mama took my brother George and me to see an air show. We had never heard of such a thing, but Mama explained that an air show is an exhibition where pilots fly airplanes and do all kinds of amazing tricks. It was held at an auto racetrack in Houston, where we lived. The place had even been given a fancy new name, the Houston Aerial Transport Field. I could hardly believe it when Mama told us that the star pilot was a woman. George said that he downright refused to believe any such a nonsense, but Mama said he would see for himself, and he did. The pilot's name was Bessie Coleman, and besides being a woman, she was also African American, just like us. Mama said that going to see Bessie Coleman was a perfect way to celebrate June 19th, or Juneteenth, as we called it. Every year we celebrated the emancipation of African Americans in Texas, which had happened on June 19, 1865, 60 years ago that very day. So off we went to the air show, and we had another surprise before the show even began. Many white people had come to see Bessie Coleman fly too, right there at the same field where we were. That was something that didn't happen often back in 1925. Once the show got underway, though, we stopped thinking about anything. We just stared at the sky and wondered. Bessie Coleman flew that plane upside down and spinning around. She dived and swooped and zoomed and looped, so that I was sure at any moment the plane would break apart or fall out of the sky. What a thrilling and astounding day! I knew then that I wanted to grow up to be just like Bessie Coleman. What details or examples does the author include to show why she admired Bessie Coleman? I was heartsick the following year when I learned that Bessie Coleman had died. I knew that her wonderful, courageous spirit would live on, though. It would live on in girls like me who would grow up as I did to follow in Bessie's footsteps, spread our wings and fly. Years later, on the day I received my pilot's license, I said a silent thank you to my heroine and role model, the great Bessie Colanlan. How are these two passages alike? And how are they different? Use details from the passage to support your response.